This episode of The Reality Check is brought to you by HelloFresh. Forget takeout. HelloFresh delivers all the ingredients for delicious, healthy meals anyone can prepare at home in less than 30 minutes. And HelloFresh is giving our Canadian checkers 50% off their first order. Go to hellofresh.ca and use promo code REALITY50 to get 50% off your first order. That's hellofresh.ca, promo code REALITY50.
This episode of The Reality Check is brought to you by FreshBooks. FreshBooks is a ridiculously easy-to-use cloud accounting software for small business owners that saves you time and gets you paid faster. Now used by over 10 million people worldwide. For your free 30-day trial, go to freshbooks.com/therealitycheck and enter Reality Check in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
This is your Reality Check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the weekly Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. This show was recorded on October 10th, 2017, and I am your host, Darren McKee. With me, as usual, are Adam Gardner.
What's up, Cuboids?
Christina Roach.
Hello.
And producer Pat.
Hi, everyone.
We have a great show for you today. We have part 2 of our interview with Britt Wray, author of Rise of the Necrofauna. And then Cristina is going to look into whether vending machines kill more people than sharks. I assume from diabetes. But first, Pat, the McGurk Effect. Made-up effect or made-up name? What is it?
Oh.
So Darren did a segment on wine tasting bias on episode 458. He looked into some reports claiming that the color of wine can influence your perception of the taste, and it appears that it can.
That was a great segment.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, when white wine was dyed red, it was perceived in many cases as having the odor of red wine.
To your credit, Darren, I think I've cited that segment more than any other segments in the past few weeks.
Which maybe says more about you than...
about how much I drink wine.
Hey, let me say you guys something. If this wine was a different color, shut up. Maybe you should shut up.
So it was a checker who goes by the handle Evil Eye who posted a comment about that segment suggesting that this was similar to the McGurk Effect, which I had never heard of. So what is the McGurk Effect? I'll do my best to describe it, but to really get a feel for how this messes with your perception, you kind of have to see it. I've linked to a couple of video examples in the show notes, and it's pretty amazing to watch. In particular, a BBC clip from the show Horizon is Seeing Believing. Professor Lawrence Rosenblum is shown close up speaking a phoneme or syllable. Essentially, he's saying ba, 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 ba with a B over and over again. Next, the video is swapped out. In the video, he's making the mouth movements for the sound va, 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 va with a V. And that's exactly what you hear, or what I heard, even though the audio track has not changed. All you need to do to confirm it is to close your eyes, and the audio switches back from va with a V to ba with a B. The McGurk Effect was first described in 1976 in a paper by Harry McGurk and John MacDonald titled Hearing Lips and Seeing Voices. It was discovered by accident when McGurk and his research assistant MacDonald asked a technician to dub a video with a different visual from the one that's heard. They were conducting a study on how infants perceive language at different developmental stages. But what it ended up demonstrating is that visual information is integrated into our perception of speech automatically and unconsciously. In one example, the syllables ba 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 with a B is spoken over the lip movement of ga 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 with a G. And this is where it gets weird. When they reviewed the video, both researchers heard a third sound, da 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 with a D. And so do many people. The McGurk Effect is essentially an illusion, and it doesn't matter if you know exactly what's going on. And this is perhaps one of the most interesting things about the effect. Even when the viewer knows what's happening, it still works. In other words, even though I know it's an illusion, my brain can't seem to turn the effect off. That said, it does work on most people, but not everyone is susceptible to the McGurk Effect. There was a study done last year on 80 professional musicians with at least 8 years of musical academic studies. They mixed and matched audio and video using the syllables la with an L, da with a D, ta with a T, ga with a G, ka with a K, na with an N, ba with a B, and pa with a P. Overall, there was no significant McGurk effect on the musicians for
Interesting.
any of the syllables, while the control group, who were presumably not musicians, showed a significant effect. They're not sure what's going on, but they speculate that musicians with this sort of intense training are so focused on auditory information, it may affect the way that their auditory cortex processes the syllables.
Could drugs inhibit some of these processes?
Could be. But these seem to be classically trained musicians, so I'm not sure that
You
would
are
be the
making
case.
the assumption that all musicians do drugs.
I believe that's the null hypothesis you have to test
Right.
against.
They measured specifically for experience, so I'm assuming that they don't think that it's, say, a certain way of thinking or a certain inclination of a person who is more interested in pursuing a career in music that might have inclined them to perceive differently.
Right. So I don't know the answer to that, Adam, but what they did was they just tested people who had already followed that career.
Yeah.
Good question, though.
So wait, now that we're here, what about you guys? I sent a video. Did anyone give it a try?
I have.
I did.
Yeah? And what did you think?
It's so strange because I know he's saying ba, but when you watch him, you're certain you're hearing fa. So it worked on me. And I know we tried it as well on Thanksgiving on a relative, and she was astounded.
All right. Darren, what about you?
Oh, yeah, it very much worked on me. I said I had some memories from my psychology class many years ago, but I don't think I've seen a video of it in quite some time, and it was compelling. He would say ba with a B repeatedly, and you're like, that makes sense. Then he says ba with a F movement of the lips, and you hear it as fa with an F. And I couldn't unsee it, and then when they put them side by side, it still looks like he's kind of saying it, but my experience was that the ba with a B sound was coming through, and it's like the program or his setup just muted the F sound, even though it was never there in the first place. So that was an interesting effect. But yes, like many powerful illusions, which I think are great tools for education, once you see them and then know about them, you still keep seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually had a bit of a back and forth about this when I sent you guys the video, and Darren wondered about how broad the effect was since they mostly picked very similar sounds. So it's true, it does work better with certain consonant pairs than others, and clearly from the videos I've seen, ba, va, ga, da are the most common ones used for demonstrations. That said, it does work in every language that has ever been tested.
Wow. Apparently
Apparently it's strongest in Dutch, English, Spanish, German, and Italian, and weaker in languages like Japanese and Chinese. So, some more interesting stuff about the effect. It's been observed as having an effect on children as young as 5 months of age.
Wow.
It works even when the video and audio aren't precisely synced. It works even if you are the person being observed, so even if the video and audio is of yourself. It works even when the audio and video are from people of different genders. There's some reduction of the effect in people with disorders such as schizophrenia, Alzheimer's, and autism. So that's the McGurk effect. And it's a pretty cool illusion. Again, I've linked to several video demonstrations in our show notes. I really suggest you guys go and check it out for yourself.
Yeah, super fun.
And now we have part 2 of our interview with Britt Wray, where we explore more interesting aspects of de-extinction and necrofauna. And for those listeners that want to win a free copy of Britt's book, we have a skill testing question for you. It does seem to be a delicate situation as more and more people are criticizing zoos for even existing in lots of places. And I was thinking of the larger why. Is it like scientifically because we can? Or is it going to have some benefit to the organism or some benefit to humans? A lot of this does seem to be human-centered. And I was thinking about, as absurd as it sounds, some of the best ways to preserve some species is to let people hunt them. I was thinking about people in the West are often outraged when rich foreigners go to Africa to kill large game. But to make sure these animals are safe from poachers, it costs money. Now, if the outraged people actually just donated money, maybe you could reduce the hunting, but a lot of people don't, so here we are. And I was thinking, might we actually resurrect some species just so that people can hunt them, or ride them, or take photos with them? It does seem like, as much as science might have certain ideals about what they're going to achieve, there may be a business model here that is unintended, but realistic given how humans tend to act.
I think that's a really important point. There is no one working on making these animals come to life in some form that wants any of that to happen, or that are doing the science in the name of that. However, due to the high degree of genetic engineering that's required to make a lot of these animals, they will, in the eyes of the law, likely not be seen as a product of nature, and therefore they should be patentable when we look to precedents of how bioengineered organisms can be treated legally. And when they're patentable, that means that those with deep pockets who want to license the patent from whoever owns the patent might be able to do what they want with such products of the patenting system on an organism. And so what if scenarios start to come to mind? What if people do want to see a theme park filled with unextinct mammoths? I have spoken with a mammoth specialist who was sincerely offered a very handsome sum to leave his academic post and join an entrepreneur on a mission to create a Jurassic Park style Pleistocene park north of Toronto. And he never took him up on it. But there are people with those ideas who want to lure people over a $7,000 bottle of wine and a fancy lunch to entertain the thought. Then there's also, what if there are pet markets, exotic pet markets, for example, or new types of food that people might want to eat? We see that people illegally eat endangered animals currently. And would it not necessarily be exotic for folks to try and eat some kind of resurrected, quote unquote, brought back from the dead species too? These are real issues that are being talked about now in legal circles as it relates to de-extinction, which is a healthy conversation to get ready for. And there might need to be new types of laws drawn up in order to deal with this, because we don't have precedent of de-extinction happening and working and being addressed by the law. But if we rely on, our knowledge about how difficult it is to get new laws in place, we can expect that a lot of precedent from bioengineering as we currently know it will apply, and that means patenting could be part of this and therefore profiting too. But, there's people trying to think wisely and get rules in place and get guidelines set up so that we wouldn't work on species that are somehow enticing for humans to want to abuse in different ways or hunt again. And the International Union for the Conservation of Nature is a world authority on endangered species. They manage the red list of endangered species, and they've written official guidelines on how to select de-extinction candidates in a responsible manner. And they make sure that people outline what human communities would do that are living in the vicinity of where people would want to release such animals, because, if they're going to cause any difficulty for those human communities, the animals don't stand much of a chance. We see this with endangered species already. There's this kind of motto of shoot, shovel, and shut up, where they just disappear if they cause problems for humans. And we have a really strong culture of NIMBY attitudes, or not in my backyard attitudes. It's like, yeah, really like that idea of having all this wild nature around, but once it starts to mess up things on my property or in my community, I'd like to eradicate it. All of this needs to be thought about when selecting candidates.
Must be very tricky because, as you said, there's the cuteness factor. So if it's cute, people want that. And if it's not cute, like it's gnarly or beastly, then people might want to hunt that. So I imagine no matter what you pick, it's going to be appealing to someone in some way that you don't really want it to be appealing.
And a lot of the megafauna that humans have been exposed to over the course of history has become extinct because we've hunted them. So
yep.
The idea that we hunt something to extinction and then bring it back to hunt it is just kind of
seems
odd.
Cosmically unjust.
I don't know if that's really what it would end up, if that's really the motive that it would end up being. But yeah.
Yeah, it does seem really silly and even perverse to go to all that.
Segueing from that, sort of playing a bit of devil's advocate, given that there's been like 5 mass extinctions in history and the vast number of species coming into and out of existence due to basic evolutionary processes have died out, like 99% or something of all species that ever lived don't, why do people care about a few species coming back? Why is this such an important thing to even focus on?
I think people have awe-inspiring ideas about how amazing it would be to look a certain species such as the Tasmanian tiger in the eye. We have emotional responses to narratives about nature that's been lost that motivates the way that we think about endangered species, or we have sci-fi obsessions that get us excited about having a pet woolly mammoth one day. And all of that can't be denied because we are humans, and we're open to that kind of thinking, which might not necessarily be the most responsible conservation reasoning, but could motivate some of the interests that certain people have. But every single individual who's working on these projects would need to answer that themselves. And I don't want to put these words in their mouths, but it is very human for us to want to do something that's so beautiful, cool, exciting, makes our lives feel like there was some climax of complete discovery and creation. And I think that gets wrapped up in this almost mythical application of what de-extinction could do. We've never seen anything to this degree happen. It's like synthetic biology on steroids when you can start telling stories about bringing extinct species back to life, even though that is misguiding us in terms of what de-extinction can actually achieve. The whole word is confusing and suggests that reversing extinction is possible when it's not. We can never undo the erasure of an entire way of life. But of course, we know we can recreate traits and do something novel and create some interesting hybrid that might do something beneficial or not in the world. But people have always been motivated by deep curiosity. And even though it has potential negative implications, it's not ever stopped us in the past.
That is true. People seem to move forward whether they should or shouldn't in certain domains.
Hi all, producer Pat here. We'll get back to the show in a second, but first a few words about our sponsors. We've used HelloFresh a few times now, and it really is pretty cool. A box shows up at your front door with step-by-step instructions and exactly the right amount of ingredients. There's no waste, just delicious meals. They do all the planning and shopping, you do the cooking. If you want to give it a try, HelloFresh is giving our Canadian checkers 50% off their first order. Go to hellofresh.ca and use the promo code REALITY50.
Hey checkers, if you're a freelancer or small business owner like me, you know how much accounting can suck up valuable time. FreshBooks makes ridiculously easy-to-use cloud accounting software that simplifies things like invoicing, tracking expenses, and receiving payments online. You can even take photos of receipts on your phone using FreshBooks mobile apps to make claiming expenses easier. Right now, you can try a 30-day unrestricted free trial with no credit card required by going to freshbooks.com/realitycheck and typing reality check in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
All right, back to the show.
I appreciated in your book you talked about ethical concerns broadly, but also your own in terms of writing the book itself. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yes, I became very aware very quickly that de-extinction is not a topic that people just go, meh, whatever about when you start to talk with them, especially if they have devoted their lives to conservation practices and close biological work with endangered species. There is such a polarized reaction around the mere premise that we could be doing this. And, a lot of the bioengineers and synthetic biology types think it's really cool. And a lot of the conservation biologists think it's absolutely immature junk to think that this could be beneficial, and that they actually think it could be threatening to endangered species and distract us from working on them or take away the resources and talent that is needed to work on saving them. So, I would enter interviews and on a variety of occasions get very soured people on the other end of the conversation, just upset that I'm even devoting my time to exploring this idea because they thought it was nonsense. And more so than that, they thought that my getting whoever it might be that's reading my book interested and familiar with the idea of de-extinction could be dangerous because it could breed fondness for the idea just from popularizing it rather than what they believe to be more just critical apprehension. And, I respect their viewpoints, of course, and it's wonderful to have strong critical voices in the debate. But when I sat with these direct criticisms and disappointments that different people told me about, in particular, one conservation biologist who I write about in the book named Stuart Pym, but there were also others. I realized this is going ahead with or without me. Definitely. So I'm in a fairly unique position to be able to explore it and shed light on it from a variety of angles. And it's my interest and ability to serve interested people that way and let them see it through the multi-sided prism and then decide for themselves. So I decided that it was not an ethical concern that I was going to bend over to and not write the book because of, but I was interested to hear how upset it made people, and that definitely shaped the way that I thought about the potential dangers of what de-extinction could do.
I think that's generally a wise stance. If something seems to be happening anyway, providing more information so people can have more informed opinions about it seems like the right way to go, especially for our listeners. Yeah. I was thinking about technology and its ever-changing pace, and some of these de-extinction research programs will say, I imagine they're in the 10 to 30 to 50-year horizons. And by that time, virtual reality is probably just going to be much, much better even than it is today. So I was thinking, might even the need or the desire to even go out in the world to a normal zoo, let alone a zoo of de-extinct creatures, be as strong, given that we may be able to create and recreate, well, almost anything possible in the next 20, 40 years?
Well, if the motivation for de-extinction remains to restore ecosystems with animals that can carry out the traits of extinct species, we're going to need the real physical animals to get out there and do their thing and fertilize the soil with their dung and eat all the dark light absorbing plants and whatever other functions people hope for them to do. But in terms of just satisfying human curiosity and allowing us to marvel in the beauty or amazingness of creatures that once were, I think virtual reality has a wonderful role to play, but it doesn't do the job of conservation, which is currently all of what de-extinction's justification is couched in.
At least that's the most accessible ethical foundation versus it's cool and I want to do it.
Exactly, yeah.
What are some of the main species that people are working on at the moment to try to de-extinct or unextinct?
Well, I suppose not surprisingly, the biggest one is the woolly mammoth that George Church's group at Harvard Genetics are working on. There's also, however, the passenger pigeon, which is being worked on by a group that has done most of the research so far at University of California, Santa Cruz, and the lead scientist, Ben Novak, has just taken the project to Australia. Also in Australia, we've got Mike Archer's group working on the gastric brooding frog. Formerly, he worked on the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, and there's also projects relating to the heath hen and the quagga and the aurochs and a couple of others, but that's a pretty good rundown.
Is there anyone that's actively looking at, or is there interest in bringing back things like Neanderthals or other close human relatives? Or is that's kind of a whole other ethical?
When you said that, I was thinking of the backbreeding, because you said the cow and the species of, there's 4% Neanderthal in some people. Can you just keep going back?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. We know that a lot of people have quite a good chunk of Neanderthal DNA in them, and there is a guy I met while I was writing the book who came up with this idea for a dating service where all the people who have their genetic analyses done that know that they have a high degree of Neanderthal DNA inside of them could go on dates and maybe like each other enough to procreate. And eventually, over many generations, they could stock up that amount of Neanderthal DNA until it becomes enough that they could start looking like Neanderthals, which is exactly what we're talking about doing with backbreeding of the aurochs, for example. So it could apply.
It's just harder to coerce humans into breeding a certain way.
Sure.
No kidding.
Yeah, and that, I mean, we also didn't descend directly from Neanderthals, so that makes it more complicated to get all of their genes across our species. But maybe just like interesting new hybrids with Neanderthal humans we could make.
And of course, the Neanderthal eugenics movement wouldn't be a hard sell for anyone.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there has been discussion about the Neanderthal just at a theoretical level because researchers in Germany back in 2010 assembled the ancient genome of the Neanderthal, so we have its DNA, and that that genome keeps getting updated and published with more clarity. And therefore, we've got the first main ingredient to do the work. But George Church, who again is working on the woolly mammoth at Harvard, wrote about what it would take in his book Regenesis. And he made an offhand comment saying it would require an adventurous human female as a surrogate mother. And that generated a lot of blowback, and people were not happy about those comments. But he said, he was taken too seriously. He understands that that's not a realistic thing that we have any kind of public acceptance around doing, but it is theoretically possible. We can conceive of how it would be done in very similar ways to how woolly mammoth de-extinction would be done, because we have the DNA.
And you put that on the internet, you'd get 1,000 yeses within a week.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I guess the concerns of, if you have a ton of failed attempts to clone an animal, when you start saying, well, now we're going to try to clone a Neanderthal, and there's going to be, potentially hundreds of failed attempts before we get a good one. Well, there's major ethical concerns.
Do Neanderthals have souls? This is a good putting that aside.
I bet they do.
Well, Britt, thanks so much for your time. If people want to learn more about you, your work, or get your book, what should they do? Where should they go?
Oh, thank you. This has been a great chat. If you want to get the book, it's available everywhere, whether that be Indigo Chapters, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your favorite independent bookstore. Hopefully it's there too. And yeah, my name is Britt Wray. And if you just go to brittwray.com, BRITTWRAY.com, that's where you can find me.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Rise of the Necrofauna, Britt Wray.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Britt.
And if you'd like to win a free copy of Britt's book, can you answer this skill testing question?
Okay, so the question is, what part of the female elephant's reproductive tract do they have that humans do not? So I'm talking about lady equipment.
That's the very sciencey terminology.
Yeah, exactly.
Good luck, listeners. Write in at info@trcpodcast.com.
First person to answer correctly will get a free book.
The vending machine doesn't seem to be going extinct anytime soon. But does it kill more people than sharks?
Have you guys seen the new trailer for Blue Planet 2 floating around the interwebs? No pun intended. For the uninitiated, The Blue Planet is a British nature documentary series created and produced by the BBC, and it's narrated by naturalist Sir David Attenborough, who also narrates the incredible Planet Earth series. Now, this new series kicks off October 29th, and the trailer features absolutely stunning how the hell did they film that cinematography like in Planet Earth? Except that the Blue Planet series, as the title hints, is specific to examining marine life in our world's oceans. One animal sure to be front and center again in the series is one of the ocean's fearless wanderers, as Attenborough describes them, the shark. Now, in the past few years, we've seen a surge of shark-related documentaries reassuring us that sharks, contrary to their fearsome rep, rarely attack, let alone kill humans. Now, Sharkwater is probably the most notable, directed by late Canadian filmmaker and conservationist Rob Stewart, who used his platform as a filmmaker to educate and in turn hopefully protect sharks from hunting and extinction. As the topic of sharks grew in interest, so did a plethora of lists with titles like 20-some shocking things that are more likely to kill you than sharks. Honestly, if you Google that, you'll see just a ton of things come up. Now, a few years ago, Sanjoy Mahajan wrote an article for Freakonomics blog called How Are Sharks Less Dangerous Than Vending Machines? An Exercise in Conditional Risk. He tells the story of being at the New England Aquarium with his daughters, checking out the shark and ray touch tank, when they were told by staff that vending machines are twice as likely to kill you as a shark. Really? Do vending machines really kill more people than sharks?
I've seen the little sticker on the vending machine telling you not to topple it, and then it falls on the dude. It's very humorous.
Well, as Mahajan says, my number sense complained that sharks simply must be more dangerous than vending machines. Now, a week ago, Carl Smallwood took this very topic on in an article for todayifoundout.com to see how legit the statement really is. So I'm going to extrapolate a few of his more salient points. Checkers, it's true. If you look at the stats, the yearly risk in the US of dying from a shark attack is roughly 1 in 250 million. While in contrast, the yearly risk of dying from a vending machine accident is 1 in 112 million. This implies a vending machine is roughly twice as lethal as a shark. So there you have it.
So how are
Okay.
people dying? Yeah.
Much like Homer, their hands were stuck inside 2 vending machines, and they kept holding on to the items, and then they eventually just starved to death.
There's more.
I'm definitely waiting for a butt at this point.
So just to be clear, we're not talking about the nutritional value of what one may purchase in a vending machine slowly killing you over time. Now, as Smallwood points out, almost every source that claims that vending machines kill more humans per year than sharks cite one single 1995 report by the Consumer Product Safety Commission as the source. Notably, these guys are looking specifically at U.S. deaths by vending machines. Now, they did a comprehensive review of available data from 1978 to 1995 and concluded at the time that a total of 37 Americans were killed by falling vending machines. So a little over 2 deaths per year. It was enough of a concern that, to your point, Adam, soda can vending machine manufacturers, or POP, as we Canucks say, announced an industry-wide warning label campaign to alert consumers that death or injury may result from rocking or tilting soda can vending machines. Now, since then, these statistics have been continuously quoted in the news and on the interwebs to suggest that the odds of being killed by a vending machine anywhere worldwide is more likely than being killed by a shark. And that alone is misleading, since these stats are specific to the US. But okay, cool. There's still a problem with the comparison. Although it's true slightly less than 1 American every year was killed by a shark, you also need to take into consideration that many Americans have 0 chance of being killed by a shark at any given moment, depending on what state they live in and whether they ever travel anywhere near an ocean. As Mahajan says, don't tell me that while surfing in that bay on that day, a vending machine posed more danger to me than the great white shark. Now, the statistics are averaged over everyone in the US. The comparison of the risk to a vending machine ignores relevant information like, whether one is actually swimming anywhere near a shark.
Right.
As well, a few sources keep tabs on vending machine injuries, and in instances where the 1995 report is not used as a baseline, people are grabbing data from the National Electronic Injury Surveillance System, which is maintained by the Consumer Product Safety Commission that tracks hospital reports. So they use these reports to calculate an estimated risk of injury posed by various consumer products. If you look at more recent case files for 2015, many of the quoted numbers seem inflated when you take into consideration the broad brush they use to connect vending machines to death and injury. About a quarter of the vending machine injuries listed in 2015 were caused by people tripping or otherwise falling into vending machines, not having machines fall on them. One case cited a 43-year-old man who pulled his back bending down to get a drink. Another cited a 66-year-old female who had chronic shoulder pain exacerbated while playing a slot machine. So while we can say with reasonable confidence every year on average approximately 1 person in the US is killed by a shark, we can't definitively compare this to vending machine deaths because the hard data just isn't there to support the claims either way. Since safety warnings and anti-tipping mechanisms have been implemented, a stat of just over 2 deaths per year in America from vending machines could have easily declined since 1995. Add to this that sharks killing people make headline news, whereas vending machine deaths may not make the breaking news unless you put it in a sentence like, do vending machines really kill more people than sharks?
Right. Not so sexy.
In the end, this is a case of broad statistics being somewhat meaningless, depending on how they are applied.
Excellent point, Cristina. I was thinking about the ratio, we'll say, of interaction or usage. As you said, not everyone interacts with sharks, but people interact with vending machines. But on some level, you'd have to think, how often do people come into contact with a shark or near versus how often are vending machines used? This just relates to the, what is someone going to do with this information? Should I not go near a vending machine? Should I just be more careful? But if vending machines are used, say, 10 times, 100 times more, then the likelihood of danger flips.
Right. And another point that Mahajan made in the Freakonomics blog was that there could probably be 0 related vending machine deaths if people just acted appropriately around vending machines. But
Oh yeah, for sure.
But it does seek to demonstrate what relative risk is. And so the idea is that your risk of a vending machine or a shark are very, very low.
Right.
But really, you should be careful on ladders, or driving, because ladders hurt and kill a lot of people, relatively speaking, right? But we don't think of ladders as very scary.
Driving on your vacation to the beach where you might encounter a shark.
Exactly.
Driving to a place where there is a vending machine.
Yeah, you're at much greater risk for sure.
Thanks, Cristina. And thanks for joining us once again, listeners. Pat showed us that our visual perceptions can influence our auditory experiences. We had part 2 of our interview with Britt Wray with her interesting book, Rise of the Necrofauna. And finally, Cristina looked into the world of vending machines and sharks and showed that they kill everyone all the time. Maybe not. True story. Until next time, think better to act better.
Peace out, Q-Voids.
Stay classy, not smartassy.
Good night, everyone.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at @TRC_podcast.